Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to be reviewing Stranger Things 2. And overall, I thought it was a bit of a drop-off compared to the first season, but I'm going to give you my thoughts, tell you what I enjoyed, what I didn't. Let me know what you thought about the season in the comments below, and without further ado, you can go check out my Stranger Things content, as well as maybe some of my She-Hulk, because that's what I've been doing lately. Fantastic Beasts, Harry Potter, all of that. Let's get into this. Starting off with the season about coming off from the first season where Will is back, and now there's this whole new plot line involving this shadow monster out there who's out to get Will, and then there's these new demon monsters that are trying to attack Hawkins, Indiana, and then all the truth about the Upside Down and sort of a lot of the things that have been going on kind of gets out. There's this new team running the lab now, and so it just kind of amps up everything that kind of happened. So I guess that's what it's about. 11 apparently isn't dead and kind of on a little bit of a different journey compared to the first season. So yeah, I have the good, and starting off the good, I think this season knew how to end itself. I think the ending itself, not as good as the ending in season 1, just because I didn't think the rest of the season was as good, but episode 6, 8, 9, 7, we'll talk about later, but that whole plot line where the demidogs are attacking Hawkins and they're all in danger, haunted house / like episode 8 is kind of like a haunted house episode in many ways, where they're attacking the lab. That's all. There's all of that's just so much fun, and I think the darker tone kind of fit the season. I have some issues with that, but I'll get into that later. I think the way it followed up from the last season was just really done well. Like a lot of Netflix shows, Cobra Kai has this issue. Some of I know they're not full Netflix, but some of the Arrowverse shows as well have this issue. A couple others as well. They have this issue, like Umbrella Academy, but this show follows up the first season. Actually does it really well because it makes it so Will's obviously not going to be perfect. He's not going to be back to what he was before the first season or whatever. So it introduces this plot line where he's having visions of this shadow monster or something. I think that was handled well. And I think the darker tone, my issue with it is that it takes away some of the charm that was there in the first season, but it does replace it with something interesting, so it doesn't really bother me that much. The other thing is that I also really like some of the new characters. Specifically, I think Billy was a nice addition to the show as kind of just someone who's just there to sort of ruin everything in many ways. Even in the finale, I'd say I like the closing of that arc. And then even the Max character, I didn't like so much at first, but then as the show went on, I thought she became a much more interesting character as the season went on. So that whole plot line I liked. I loved the idea of putting Dustin with Steve. That was fun. That it started that plot line, which I bet is going to go into the season 3 and 4. So I'm excited to see how that continues. The whole thing where Will's having visions of the shadow monster, I think it's set up well. I wish it kicked into high gear a little bit earlier than it does. It doesn't really kick into high gear until episode 6 or even episode 5, I'd say. So yeah, I'll get into that. So all the children kids are starting to grow up as they're starting to like girls a bit. I think then the show starts to become even a bit more fun, I'd say, in that sort of sense. The school sense, I think they're more fun in this season. The whole plot line with the lab, I really liked how the lab's being taken over by this guy who actually wants to get rid of this, who actually wants to do good things. I like that element of it. The Hopper plot line with him and 11, some of the things I liked. I liked the idea of it, but in execution, there's just some oddly done things. And specifically 11's plotline just right at the end of the season, just didn't care for that. Overall, a lot of great things in this season. I think a lot of the characters are continuing, some nice new additions, but there's a bunch of issues. Now we have the mixed / bad. The first thing I'm going to talk about, I think the pacing of the season was not good. It just starts off and moves very slowly, and I'm like, when are we actually going to get into the Stranger Things, if you know what I mean? So, I mean, it starts to develop intrigue involving Will with this shadow monster's mind. And as I said, I liked how it follows up from the first season, but with all the main plot lines that were ended, that's continued, the whole cliffhanger. But then the problem is, then there's this whole thing involving the plants dissipating or dying off, and then it just sparks it doesn't spark that much intrigue. I'm like, okay. I mean, as I said, it's still actually a good season. I still enjoy it, but it just it doesn't develop intrigue quickly enough. It doesn't really go into payoff mode. It doesn't kick into high gear. I think this season was maybe an episode or episode or two too long. Maybe take away maybe one episode, or combine the second, and the third and fourth episodes maybe into one episode. I don't know. So just all of that was kind of done just a bit oddly. And then another thing, the 11 plot line right at the end of the season. If it was a bit earlier in the season, I think I would have liked it a bit more. Maybe after episode 5 instead of episode 6. I think I could have liked it a bit more. But then where it's placed just makes it really odd. I mean, because 11's not even in episode 6, so maybe she comes back sometime, or she's maybe made mention of she's coming back to Hawkins or something, so maybe she has one scene in episode 6 or something, I don't know. So, or episode 7, so it's just that whole plot line was done oddly. The plot line itself, I don't hate, I just don't like when it is in the season. As the third to last episode, as we're starting to go into payoff mode, that happens, and then it's just like, okay, I can see what they're going for here, and I kind of like the idea of it. And it does continue a plot line that was kind of set up right in the beginning of the first episode of the season, but yeah. The Billy plot line, I like kind of the idea of the character, but he's just a bit too sort of mean and not evil, but he's too mean a bit at times, especially to his sister, I guess. I know there's a little whole plot line, I think episode 5 or 6, where Max sort of explains it a bit, but even then, like, he's just like, it just, yeah, you know what I mean. Although, he's a Metallica fan, which I appreciate. Boris from Metallica. And also the Hopper and 11 plotline. I think there's just too many just moments that I'm like, well, I just start to cringe in many moments. Specifically when she says that you're now like, yeah, you're like Papa or whatever. Yeah, that didn't really work for me. I like the idea of Hopper sort of taking 11 in, trying to keep her safe, because he knows that she's gonna get hunted down in some cases by the lab. But I just don't think either of the characters are really thinking clearly. So it leads to some sort of misconceptions and sort of arguments, but neither one of the characters I'd say is being good in that case. So yeah, that whole plot line, things weren't done well. As I said, the beginning of the season was a little rough, but then once it kicked into high gear, once those demi-dogs are started to form or started to come up, then I think it gets good. The Nancy and Jonathan plotline, where they're off on going to do that thing, I feel like they just wanted to do that for no reason, just because they had nothing to do with those two characters. So in that case, that did make sense, but that whole thing was a little odd. I'm not gonna lie. Overall, still really enjoyed the season. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. And yeah, still a good season. I still really enjoyed it. It was still not quite as bingeable as the first season, because I just thought the darker tone would also, very mentioned, the darker tone, I liked the subsets as how it was the stakes were a bit higher than they were in the first season, but then part of the problem with that is that it loses some of the charm that was really there in the first season. I think the main appeal of the first season was the charm of the kids and how they feel like normal people, but that are also thrown into this sort of wild scenario where their friend has gone missing, and then they're trying to figure out the mystery of it. But I think whereas the first season was just well paced, I think the season just didn't kick into high gear because it just didn't really have something to hook in right away. Whereas the first season had Will gone missing, the second season didn't really have that. So it's just like, okay, we're following this whole plot line involving the pumpkins or whatever dying off or something, and then following that is this whole plot line involving demi-dogs and the shadow monster behind it or something. So I did enjoy this season. It was still really fun, really enjoyable, but compared to, I think, the first season, didn't work as well. So those are my thoughts. Share your thoughts about the season in comments below. Did you like it more than the first season? Did you like it less? I would say the ending to the season was fantastic, but the sort of middle and beginning were a bit off. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.